Okay. Good morning again. Welcome back to our second session today as part of Global Entrepreneurship Week. My name is Devin Lane. I'm the President and CEO here at 36 Degrees North. We are so proud to be hosting so many great events this week for Global Entrepreneurship Week. And this next session is no different. This is a great session today for us on an entrepreneur's guide to design thinking. It's going to be led by Abby Marino from The Mind, who is a great partner of 36 Degrees North, and we're super excited about having her join us today. We've got some folks obviously attending virtually as well, so if you have questions, be sure to submit those online. We'll make sure those get to Abby and her team. And for those of you here in person, if you have any questions, just let us know as well. So with that, Abby, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks again for being here today and presenting this great session.
Thank you, Devin. Okay. We are going to demask while we're speaking, and then we'll remask when we are not. So hi, my name is Abby Marino. I am the director of The Mind Tulsa in Oklahoma City. This is my counterpart, Haley Rader.
Hi, nice to see you guys.
Okay, so today we are going to teach about design thinking. For those of you who are unfamiliar, design thinking is a process through ideation and learning your customer, building a solution for that customer, and then piloting it to implement it eventually. So hopefully you all have some type of business idea. Today we're actually just going to teach the process, and we're going to give you a case study of a business idea so that we can interact and talk to each other as we go through this process. But at the end of learning all of these tools, you should be able to apply this to your own business idea so that you can use design thinking to build a solution that is based on what your customers want. So again, we are The Mind. We have done this workshop here at GEW for the last several years, and we are so happy to be back. We are a social entrepreneurship fellowship here in Tulsa. We train young professionals in skills like design thinking, like leadership styles, like consulting best practices. And we pair them with local entrepreneurs and organizations so that they can consult to make social ideas happen here in the city of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Some of our past projects have included Kitchen 66, which is now Mother of Market. We've worked with Tulsa Area United Way Social Innovation Grants to launch even more social enterprises in our city. And we are really good at this hands-on training to catalyze projects. We have experience in over 250 projects over our last 8 years in Oklahoma. And we also do a lot of these types of community events and trainings so that we can make sure that the knowledge we have is disseminated to the future and Tulsa. So The Mind is, again, as Devin said, closely partnered with 36 Degrees North. We are also supported by some of our local family foundations, George Kaiser and Black Taylor Family Foundations. And we are a program of the OU Ronnie K. Ronnie Center for the Creation of Economic Wealth, which is a consulting firm here in Oklahoma that has been around for over 12 years and does a lot of the same things The Mind does, but on the university side. So again, what is human-centered design? Human-centered design matches human needs with available resources in order to create a solution-driven business. The idea of human-centered design is that all problems are solvable and that the people experiencing these problems hold the key to the answer. So people who are really good human-centered designers have empathy, they embrace ambiguous problems, they learn from their failure, and they iterate and act quickly. There are 3 key components to the human-centered design process. Inspiration, which again is really getting to know the end user. Ideation, which builds a solution that these end users can agree to. And then implementation that brings that solution to life in a full business format. So today we're really going to focus on inspiration and ideation. We're going to teach you some tools that you can take away from today's workshop and apply to your own business idea. And then in the future, if you are interested in working with us more closely, we can get together and work a little bit more on that implementation part. So to dive a little deeper into this process, as I said, it has 3 components. inspiration, ideation, and implementation. A lot of what we're teaching is based on IDEO.org, their design thinking workbook. So there are lots more tools there, but we are going to teach some today in the first two phases, inspiration and ideation. So we're going to focus on defining the problem. What is the problem that end users are experiencing in this category of your business idea? Once we know who we're trying to talk to, we can build this customer archetype, we can figure out how many people there are, and we can learn everything we need to know about that end user so that the solution we built serves them directly. The ideation phase, we'll talk about how to brainstorm lots of solutions without letting our own biases or judgments getting in our way. And once we have thought of all these brainstormed ideas, we can learn about benchmarking, so seeing what else is in the market to make sure that we're not redesigning a solution that already exists, as well as to make sure that we are learning from the best ideas that have already been implemented. We'll talk a little bit about prototyping or testing that idea. So picking small assumptions throughout the value chain of your solution in order to make sure that it can get results and that those assumptions are true. And then we'll talk about how you can take that to your users to collect feedback from them, again, to restart the wheel of ideation if your solution isn't quite there yet. The very last phase of this is implementation. That's when you have a minimum viable product that can be taken to the market, that can be pitched in front of investors, that people can purchase. And again, we're not going to get very far into that phase today, but if you want more help with that, that's what our organization is here for. So I'm going to hand it over to Haley, who's going to talk a lot about this problem identification piece, which is a part of that initial inspiration phase.
Okay, thanks, Abby. So we're going to talk about beginning the design thinking, and that really begins with identifying the problem. So something that we tell our students and the young professionals that we work with is don't be to your solution. So what this means is typically when you have a business idea, you have a solution that you've created, that you have poured a lot of time into, and you think, well, this solves a problem for me, so it must solve a problem for a lot of people. But we are trying to kind of flip that mindset and really make sure that you have identified a problem so that if your solution needs to change, it doesn't necessarily feel like a failure, but rather it helps with this iterative process and really solves the solution. So we'll begin, as Abby said, by walking through a case study that we have actually done here in Tulsa. So begin with your design challenge. So this is really trying to understand the heart of the problem.
Yeah, actually, can I interject really quickly? So for those of you who are online, we handed out packets to all of our people in person. And these have a workbook that you can follow along and write on and just have for yourself to take away from this workshop. If you are online and you visit our website, themindtulsa.com, you click on our trainings tab, and you scroll down below the photo, there is a button for our workbook for today, so you can pull it up online and follow along with us.
It's in the chat.
Oh, Jamie put it in the chat too, so please pull that up if you would like to.
Thank you, I forgot about that. So your design challenge should really begin with this statement of how might we? And there is a lot baked into these three words. It really comes from IDEO that piloted this question that has taken off. How might we just indicates that there is not a wrong answer. So you're thinking, how might we? What are the options that are available to us? And then how can we be collaborative in that approach so that we are really bringing the best to the table? So the question that we are working with right now is how might we provide a low-cost transportation for youths in Tulsa that are trying to make it to social services appointments? Okay, so what does that make you do instantly when you ask that question, how might we? I instantly start brainstorming. You guys instantly start thinking of ideas that just kind of pop into your head. So this is really the first part of identifying the problem is then you begin thinking of all of the implications which should derive solutions and thinking of what is the theme that is encapsulated in this design challenge. Okay, so this is really around transportation accessibility. So when you're thinking of this problem and how might we solve it, you're thinking about what is at the heart of the problem here, which is that these youth not access, they don't have cars maybe, or maybe they are not familiar with the bus system to be able to get to their social services appointments. So we begin to ask questions. You might ask all of the relevant stakeholders. You might ask the students or the high schoolers themselves that are trying to get to these social appointments. You might talk to the social workers. You might talk to current people that are working in the transportation ecosystem to understand what barriers exist and begin to compile insights that help define your problem. And so we really found that when we began to ask these questions, there were 3 key insights. That youths did not want to ride alone. They wanted to bring someone. They couldn't afford or access transportation. Either they couldn't afford a car or it wasn't easy to take their bicycle to their appointment. And finally, that the social services, they actually lose money by these youths not showing up to their appointments. So those were the big insights that we found from really digging into the problem and understanding the problems from multiple dimensions from all the people that were kind of experiencing this issue. Which leads us really clearly, I think, to this customer archetype map that you see here, which I think it's kind of a funny little guy in the middle, but a super helpful tool to be able to understand all of the different stakeholders and really what the user and the customer is experiencing. So putting yourself in their shoes. This is also really helpful to actually talk to the people that you think are your customer, the person that you think is experiencing your problem. So what do they hear? What do people say? What are their friends asking? What are they asking? What do they need to see for this to work? Maybe the students don't want to ride the bus because of the perception of the bus system. What do they think and feel? Does it feel like a stigma to ask people for help to go to their social services appointment? And then down here, we really see the pain and gain. So what is the disadvantage of us not being able to answer their problem? What causes, what hurts them there, what frustrates them there? And then gain, what is the advantage of that? What are their wants and needs in order to solve this problem? And this is probably one of my favorite tools in design thinking, and I think where we can really add a lot of value when we're thinking through this process. So it begins with you, it begins with your super cool product or service and your user. But that is not the only people that are relevant in this supply chain or this business model. So you can kind of begin to think of other people that might be influencing this ecosystem. In your personal experiences, is there anyone that you could also say belongs kind of on this screen? So we have the influencer. I think that's really easy to think of social media, maybe a blogger. Others?
Your friends and family?
Yeah, definitely. Is the user always the customer? No. Then are they always the decision maker?
No.
Yeah, so we see this kind of discrepancy a lot in a lot of the education nonprofits that we work with or education services, because the user might be the student and the customer might also be the teacher, but the decision maker is way up top with the superintendent. So thinking of this ecosystem can help you understand who you really need to engage in order to make this a solution that addresses all of these people. We also have, I think, a saboteur that comes up here. And the saboteur is not always a person that is saying, oh, this product is awful, we don't need it. But sometimes it's a budget limitation. Or it's something that could stop it from working perfectly as you think of it. So by being able to draw this out, it really helps open your mind to specific problems that you may not have thought of. It also gives you an idea of people to talk to, because if you can go talk to an example of everyone on this slide, You're going to understand problems that you didn't even know existed, because maybe you didn't know budget was an issue. Maybe you didn't know that the decision maker was going to be different than your user or your customer. So really being able to draw that out, interview people or talk to people that would be examples of this, really helps in that problem definition as well as your solution creation.
So I know Haley already listed some people who might be on this map, but if we think about this use case of youth transportation and getting youth to their youth services appointments, who might be some people on this map who you would want to follow the empathy map and ask all of those questions for? Parents, absolutely. Who else is important?
Social workers.
Social workers, definitely. Who else comes to mind?
Friends.
Friends. Yeah, youth themselves, right? We want to talk to the youth. We want to talk to their parents, their social workers. There might be other people involved. There might be teachers. There might be school counselors. Anyone who is even closely related to this problem can give you some insight so that we can get back to that key insights that will help lead us to a solution. So once we've talked to all these people, we can do a little bit more of a broad STEM analysis.
Yes, this is where you can begin to list potential customer groups, because likely if you have one product, even if you've identified a problem to a specific customer, there might be different subsets of those customers. For example, in this product, or in this case study that we've given, we were able to identify two key problems, and that was unfamiliarity with the bus system, and then also they were not comfortable going alone. And those are, both youths, but they are experiencing two different problems that we can offer different solutions for the same outcome. And then this assigning priorities as you are thinking of the problems that you've identified in these potential solutions, there are going to need to be people that you bring into that conversation to make sure that it is addressing the needs in a feasible way that meets the needs of both you and the people that you're trying to help. And of course, if you are filling in that customer archetype grid, you might be able to find the difference between those different customers so that you can begin to understand those problems and have a more direct solution. And then this is the market. So once you know what your problem is, and you know who your customer is, you can begin to ask the question of how many are there. So we have it segmented into three different levels, starting with your broadest, which is your total available market. So that is, if my problem is trying to get youths to social services, I want to know how many youths who need to go to social services that there are in Tulsa. What is that total number? That's our total available market. Our served available market is going to be the people that don't necessarily have transportation to get there. So maybe it's the ones that don't have cars, the ones that don't have parents that can take them to these social services. And we break that down to the people that are experiencing our problem, and that's people who are experiencing these specific problems that we've identified. So the people that want to take a friend, or the people that are unfamiliar with a bus pass system, and that is when we can specifically be able to target those people. Is there anything you want to add to this slide?
Yeah, I think my mic turned off. Okay. So I think this market analysis and segmentation comes from a wide breadth of research on potential end users. And this is really a great case for why this idea will work or won't work. So if you have a market in Tulsa of 5 people, is that going to be a sustainable long-term business model? No, right? So there might be some part of your problem that needs to be broader, or you might need to look at a different problem. If you have a market that is huge, but there are 10 other solution providers who do the exact same thing, is that a market that you would necessarily want to enter? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how special and unique your solution is. So again, this is, you can get to a total market segmentation by the bottom-up work of talking to everybody in the city who's going through this problem. And then you can confirm that your numbers are right by doing that top-down analysis and thinking about the population of Tulsa and making some assumptions on people who might be in your age range, people who might be in your household income range, people who might be at a district level experiencing these problems. And once you know that your answer and to the market analysis is pretty solid, you have a really good idea of how many people there are, this tool can be used to validate the need and the size of the solution that you're providing.
Yes, and I want to reiterate what Abby said about the top-down and bottom-up approach. I think a lot of times when we talk to entrepreneurs, they have that mindset of the 1% of China is really going to be a great market to capture, and it's only 1%. But if you actually think about it, you really have to marry the top-down and bottom-up approach because yes, the total market can be huge, but the people who actually would use your product and have the need for your product is smaller. You really get to that by actually talking to people and filling out that customer archetype.
Does anyone have any questions about how to analyze a market or why this is important? Yeah, Mark.
Would you say that like the target market is the same as like kind of your first customers, or do you like identify like your best first customer as like an even smaller segment within your target market?
Okay, so the question is that target market the first customer, or is there a smaller segment of the target market that is that first customer?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I would say the target market is probably that first customer, but this is where the design thinking approach is really important and understanding how many of those first customers there are and thinking with the end in mind. So your first iteration of your product might be to target that first ideal customer, but then what would you need to believe for it to grow into that available market? How would you pivot your solution to broaden it even further? So I guess it's a yes and no question or answer. So yes, it is target market, but don't be married necessarily to only having a solution for that one first customer. You can grow it as well.
Any other questions about market analysis? Or even just about talking to customers or understanding what problems are being experienced? Mark, yeah.
Do you have any like sort of limitations on like how you segment the size of those? Do you like in terms of dollar amounts, like is like a target market should it sit within like a certain X, like hundred thousands or millions, or what do you all think?
Okay, Mark's question is about segmenting the market. Is it done by any specific financial amount or number of people? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question, and the answer is it depends. So it depends on a couple things, on what your product is, how big the market could be, and also who you're communicating this market to. So if you are maybe a social services organization and you're trying to communicate how many students you could reach, that would probably be what you would focus on. But if you are talking to investors, then you might convert that to a dollar amount. So for that side of the question. And then for how big, I think that really depends on what you're comfortable with and what your research shows you. So if you are able to talk to 10 people or 10 youths that are going to these social services appointments, and 2 of them express a need for your solution, then that might be something that might give you an indication of how big your market might be. It might be 20% of what you've identified. So this is really where doing that first person research and getting out and talking to people can really be an indicator for what this market size should look like and really what that target market looks like.
Okay. So now that we've talked through a lot of this problem definition and user research part, we're going to talk about building your solution. So just to reiterate, everything we've done so far has no business solution in mind, right? You might start to have hypotheses, but you're not taking your idea to the people you're talking to yet. You're going to the end user and learning from them, and now we're going to start to ideate what a solution might look like. So innovation happens at the middle of feasibility, viability, and desirability. So once we have all of this user information, we can start to brainstorm ideas, and those ideas need to be desirable. So do people want it? Will they pay for it? They need to be feasible. Can we do it? What will it take to do it? Are we the right people to do it? And then the third part of viable. Is this financially doable? How do we get it to market? What will it take financially in order to do that? So the rest of this section is going to talk about using what we know to brainstorm solutions, testing those solutions to make sure they're desirable, feasible, and viable, and then using that information to go back to the customers, double check that everything we've done is good. And then from there, we can start to implement and take that minimum viable product to market. Okay, so this is probably, okay, here we go. This is probably one of my favorite parts, and we're gonna take a couple minutes to let everyone really participate here. And we're gonna start brainstorming solutions. So normally we do this with sticky notes, and we write a ton of things on sticky notes, we throw them all up on the wall, we categorize them into different ideas, and then we go from there. If we could all be together at one whiteboard, that's what we would do today, but we're gonna have to do this at our seats and then use our voices to really communicate and come together in this exercise. So the idea behind solution brainstorming is quantity over quality. So whatever is in the back of your mind, judging what you're thinking about, just let it go. We wanna be as creative as possible. We wanna think of the most absurd ways that we could solve these problems, because you never know what that's going to spark. You never know when that idea combined with a really feasible idea could be the golden ticket. So what we like to say is radiate possibilities. What would it take? Think about your blue sky dream for solving this problem and build on other ideas. So we do this a lot in our organization. We do this with every project we run. We get sticky notes and we just set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes and write down every solution we can think of. The desired outcome is at least 10 testable, workable solutions that we can categorize into buckets and start to build hypotheses from. And from there, we'll see what the value proposition of that is to make sure that these solution ideas would add value to our customers. So I'm going to actually set a timer right now for about 3 minutes. And I want everyone in the audience to write down as many ideas as you can think of to solve this youth services problem. So think about these 3 insights we have. Youth don't want to ride alone. Youth don't have access to transportation. And social service providers are decreasing their impact and losing money because they're not able to serve these youth who are not able to show up to their appointments. So again, I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. And I want you to write down as many possible solutions as possible so that we can work through them together and compare that to the case study so that we can see what solutions we've come up with. Go ahead and get started.
Did you say the 3 criteria?
Yeah, the 3 insights. Youth do not want to ride alone to social services appointments. Youth do not have access to transportation, whether that's their own transportation or public transportation. And then the third, youth services providers are actually losing money and they're unable to have impact because youth are not showing up. So they have a stake in the game too. We'll just pull it up too. Again, just get a ton of solutions on paper. Doesn't matter if they're ideal. Still a whole minute left, so many more ideas to think about. Ten seconds left. All right, drop the pens. Okay, who wants to share some of their ideas?
Okay.
All right, can you tell me your name?
My name's Peter.
Peter?
Peter.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Likewise. Provide access via social security to rental scooters or bikes, or Uber or Lyft.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat that for our audience. So access to rental scooters, bikes, or Uber or Lyft.
Same with the public bus.
Same with public bus.
Maybe social services have their own bus.
Social services have their own bus.
Or is there any bus access, school bus access that could be arranged?
School bus access. Great, okay, so lots of new channels to connect people with existing resources that can provide transportation. Okay, yeah, Mark.
I also, I like the scooter idea, like they were able to buy a bunch of scooters and kids could ride together on scooters wherever it was.
Okay, scooter idea.
Then also maybe instead of the kids coming to the services, maybe the services go to the kids, like meeting after school or something like that.
Bring the services to the school.
Those are my main two.
Okay. Yeah, what's your name?
Talisha.
Talisha, hi.
Hi. So my idea was like an app that matched drivers with riders, kind of like Uber, but they're volunteers. And
Okay.
then they can also do like a buddy pass so that them and their friends can ride together. Also, the teachers.
Can I repeat that quickly? Okay, a buddy app that matched volunteer drivers to the riders and also buddy passes so that the riders could bring friends.
And then the teachers or the social workers or counselors could also like arrange these rides for the people. So if like the kid didn't have a cell phone or internet access, they can just set it up for them.
Okay, so teachers, counselors, social workers, setting up these connections. So they're managing getting the students to their appointments.
And then I have one more.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I guess it's still a thing. I don't know if it's a thing, but the safe houses, like the little yellow signs that are at different businesses, you can have safe houses for transportation. So like the bus could have one, or the school bus, or Uber drivers could have like that safe house kind of verification. So
Yeah.
the students could just say, oh, I need a ride to this. And it'll be like a safe place.
Okay, so creating a safe house designation so that students know if they're using that type of transportation or that specific Uber driver, for example, they can trust it and they should feel safe. Okay, yeah, in the back, what's your name?
Vanessa.
Vanessa, hi.
Hi, are some of the programs virtual? Do they have to physically show up?
So at the time, these were all in person, but I would imagine right now that yes, they would be virtual. Okay, okay. Any other ideas we want to think through? Did anyone surprise themselves with the number of ideas that they were able to think about? You had your first idea, but that wasn't the only one. You're able to continue building on it. Some head nods. Okay. Well, it sounds like we have a couple different categories. We have a category where the students are given a lot more channels for transportation. Maybe some education wrapped in there to allow them to take existing resources like the bus or like Lime scooters. It sounds like we have this category of bringing that service to the students. So whether that's in a safe house or at the school or in a virtual environment, putting the onus on some other people in the map to bring the solution to the people. And then we have this other solution of matching volunteers with students in order to drive them to their appointments. Did I miss anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, so if we were able to put all these stickies on the wall, we might move them so that the accompanying ideas fell into the right categories. And from there, we could run some quick tests on all of these categories in order to ensure that the people involved in each solution were able to validate that this was a good idea. So if we think about this first bucket of ideas, we have this solution of giving students more access to scooters and bikes and Ubers. Who might we talk to validate that this is something people want? Yeah. Parents, social workers, anyone else?
Students.
The students themselves, yes. So student A, would you feel comfortable going to your appointment on a Lime scooter? We can learn so much from asking questions like that. Do you think one person in each category is enough, or how many people would you want to talk to feel confident in that hypothesis? 100.
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah. So again, just showing it's important to get a lot of different people's feedback on these ideas. Okay, we have the second category of bringing social workers to school, bringing services online, bringing services to a specific safe house. Who would we talk to about that?
The Board of Education people.
Board of Education people, maybe the school principal. Can we bring social workers to school? Who else might we talk to?
Social workers.
Social workers. Do you want to drive to 5 different schools in a day? Is that feasible for you? What would it take for you to be able to do that? Yeah.
The kids, like, would they be embarrassed if their social worker came to school?
The kids, how do they feel about their social workers coming to school and talking to them? It's a big one. Okay, and then we have this third category that seemed to utilize a whole new market of users. So connecting volunteers to students. Who might be a volunteer? What types of volunteers would you talk with?
I would talk with like existing volunteers that do things like that, like Meals for Wheels type people.
Meals for Wheels, existing volunteer drivers. Yeah. Anything else? Probably again, the students. Would you want to get in the car with someone who is a certified volunteer? Is it better if you have a buddy you can take with you? Okay.
I think what you bring up is a really good segue to this next.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next part of design thinking is making sure you understand all of the other solutions that are out there. So have I done all this work to build a solution that already exists? Or are there 5 other people who do this, but there's something really wrong with what they do? So let's take this solution of volunteer drivers paired with youth and a buddy to get them to their appointments. Is there someone else who does this? Is there someone else who does this in Boston? And that's really not a competitor, but we can learn from what they've done in order to make sure that we're gonna do it right. Or is there someone else who does this exactly the same in Tulsa, and maybe we don't wanna compete with them, maybe we wanna focus on a different part of the problem. So this brings us to benchmarking.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just blacked out for a second. So this brings us to benchmarking, which is talking with anyone who does the same thing or anyone who does something similar. So if we're doing volunteer riders, we do want to talk with Meals on Wheels. We want to learn how they make this financially viable. Do they have to reimburse mileage or gas, or do people really just do this out of the kindness of their heart? Who is the perfect volunteer for an opportunity like this? Are there certain people they use in Tulsa or groups they use in Tulsa who can provide volunteers? Or do we just need to go talk with everyone in the world and see who is the perfect volunteer driver? But it's also important to see what hasn't worked. A lot of times people will come up with solutions or with business ideas that were tried about 3 years ago and didn't work back then. And then the question is that barrier something that we can overcome now? Has the market landscape changed? Is the city now ready for the solution when it wasn't 3 years ago? Or what would it have taken 3 years ago to make this work, and how can we do that now? So being a responsible, human-centered designer, someone who's ready to commit their lives and their business mind to this idea, you have to know what else is out there. It's amazing how many times we talk to someone and we say, who else does this? And they say, no one, we're the only ones, this has never existed before. It might be true that your exact solution has never happened before, but there might be 5 or 6 things that are really, really close that we can learn from. So again, it's great to go understand the benchmarks, understand the competition, see what you can learn, see what you haven't even thought of yet as a potential barrier or as a potential driver of your solution's success.
Okay, so now that we've thought about the problem, we have defined our problem, we've filled out the customer archetypes, we've talked to them, we've drawn out who our stakeholders would be, and we've done our benchmarking, we now have a decent idea of what our solution is going to look like. So what do we do next? We have to test our solution. Again, this is where it gets really important to remember that you are married to your problem, you are not married to your solution. You have to be able to be okay changing components of your solution to make sure that it is meeting the needs of your customers. So tests can validate or refute your assumptions. So if we think to our case study, and we're going with our solution is connecting volunteers to drive students to their appointments. What might be some assumptions that we have there?
That people want to volunteer.
Yeah, that there are volunteers to choose from, absolutely. What else? I think I heard it before, about students' willingness. Would students want to get in the car with a volunteer? There might be some assumptions parents would be okay with a volunteer driving their student. Then there's more questions there of what would it take parents to feel okay with that? So we begin to have some assumptions there that we need to test. Okay, so we have 4 tests that we really recommend. So the first is the smoke screen, which is really market focused. So this is, are your customers actually interested in this product? So this is an easy one is, in a coffee shop, you have the tabs of if you are interested in a guitar lesson, pull this tab. And you can go back, and if 5 of your 10 tabs are pulled, then you know you might have a decent market for guitar lessons. In this virtual world, an equivalent is a landing page. where you just have someone, a website, and if, hey, you're interested in this or want to learn more or want to talk to me about it, put your email in. If you collect 200 emails, then that might be a good indication that you have a market for your idea. Wizard of Oz is making them think that you have a fleshed out product, but it is really you manually doing something behind the scenes. So this really tests the feasibility and desirability of your product or your service. So if we take your app idea, that might be you have taken the time to create maybe the user interface of the app, but you have not spent all the money to develop everything that's happening behind the scenes. So maybe it's you manually matching a volunteer and a student in an Excel sheet without thinking of it. That's how Airbnb started, is it was just, a couple guys that were matching it, but you thought as the user that it was a website with an algorithm and it was super fancy and high tech, when in actuality it wasn't. So that is a low cost way to begin to test your idea. You also have the concierge. So this is where you walk them through the product. So this could really be done in a focus group, or maybe you talk to a student immediately after they have gone with a volunteer. Say, what did you like about that? What didn't you like? What could we do to make this experience better? And you might do the same kind of questions with the volunteer to really understand all those touch points and the questions there. And then you do prototype and modeling. So this is where you find a piece and you begin to model it. This is really where you get the idea of a proof of concept. So again, to your app example, this might be where you actually spend the time to do the UX design and you're testing that piece to make sure that the colors are engaging and they like the buttons and they like what the FAQ says. We offer an agile product design team on our Norman campus, and oftentimes this might be a specific hinge that needs to work right, and that's what is that the design is built on. So they need to test that and make sure that specific element works before they can spend money or time on the whole product.
This doesn't always have to be technical either. So in this volunteer writer example, maybe the people building this can volunteer as drivers and can pick up students and take them and test this assumption of how much time it takes to get one student from school to social work appointment. Or how do I interact with a student to make them really comfortable in the car? So again, it can be this building an actual product, but it can still be taking action on a small piece of your business model to make sure that it's still a good solution.
Yes, and that's a great point, is that these tests can be on as small of a piece as you need it to be or as big as you need it to be. And that's part of the iterative process is, you might start, you're testing a big piece of your solution, and as you get that right, well, now the only small piece is half of your parents are kind of worried that the volunteers may not have the driving record that they are interested in for them carrying their kids. Okay, so now we begin to test what would that look like in order to make the parents feel more comfortable. So it's getting, a little bit of a smaller test and smaller test until you have a solution that meets your needs. Okay, and so this is where we get to concept testing. So this really just builds off of the 4 types of testing that we just talked about. So maybe I'll take a second here and just ask if you guys have any questions about how to test your ideas quickly and using design thinking. I know we have some people online, so they can write something in the chat if they have a question. Okay, well, we can move on then. You and I are just designing people are talking through it so well. But here it's important to think about, what the limitations you're working within are. What resources do you have available to you? Are there financial limitations? Are there time constraints? Are there people limitations of can you actually get a volunteer to work through this? Also, how do I measure the success of my test? And this is where I think you can go back to that benchmarking and competition and think about really looking at what they are doing to measure their success, because usually they've spent some time thinking about it, and it can be helpful for you to understand kind of what the industry success measures are, so that you can begin to kind of think about how to build those success measures into your tests.
Okay. So you can apply these tools and practices to your own business idea. Again, this is a 3-part model with inspiration, ideation, and then implementation. So pulling the curtain back, the case study we've been working with is Modus Tulsa. Is anyone familiar with that business? Yeah. Okay, so we love Modus. They were a mind project of ours a couple of years ago. And I want to talk through quickly how the team followed each of these stages to get to this solution that is volunteer driver is paired with a student to take them to their social service appointments. So again, they talked to tons of students about what it looked like to get to their appointments, what their problems were specifically. They also rode the bus. They also talked with people on the bus. They tried to read the bus schedule. So they tried to understand this problem from a lot of different angles. They built that customer archetype. So the customer archetype is the service provider. It is the teacher who sees the student. It's the parent who cares about the student, and it's the student who wants the help. From there, they were able to understand that there is a sizable market in Tulsa, both financially from social service providers losing business and impact, and then also from students who really benefit and make our city even better when they're able to get the care they need. They were then able to go to this ideation. They actually traveled to Boston to benchmark solutions that existed there. And then they were able to pilot the solution they had come up with, which included all 4 of the types of testing we talked through. So building a landing page, being behind it and connecting volunteers to drivers, driving students to their appointments. Again, riding the bus with students, doing that concierge testing of seeing what they didn't know and what would have made the experience better. And then collecting user feedback the entire time to make sure that the solution really worked. And then implementation took this minimum viable product with a handful of drivers driving students to their appointments, also with Modus going into schools and teaching students how to ride the bus, and working with the bus to find really affordable ways to get students to ride it. Modus has given over 6,000 rides now. They've trained over 10,000 students in accessing public transportation in our city. And they've been able to have this great impact because of the steps of human-centered design they were able to follow. So to all of you who are in the audience and online who have really good business ideas, I encourage you to take this tool set, to take the workbook we've given you, and to go off and apply these concepts and these tools to human-centered design. Human-centered design relies on action. It relies on talking to people and understanding your customer. And it relies on being flexible, being willing to marry the problem, not the solution. So again, we'd like to encourage you to stay in touch with us. We are in the Mine. We're in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We work with businesses. We've done workshops with this with a lot of nonprofits and organizations. So if you feel like this would add value to your company or to your organization, we are always happy to come and talk about building innovative thinking and action taking into your company's culture. But beyond that, we want to help a lot of businesses in Tulsa be better. So I think I actually recognize a couple of your names as already having signed up for venture strategy sessions with us this week. But we do have 2 sessions left. So you can sign up at 36 Degrees North website on the GEW page for a venture strategy session with the Mine. And if you're not able to sign up, if all the spots are taken, please reach out to me, reach out to themindtulsa@gmail.com. And we're more than happy to sit down, to connect, to talk about your idea, to talk about opportunities for you to join the Mine Fellowship or just be involved with our many programs. And then again, we have a wonderful social media and marketing coordinator who is always posting on social media and sending out newsletters. So if you would like to follow along, follow us on social media, The Mine OK and The Mine Tulsa. And if you visit our website, you can sign up for our newsletter to stay in touch and stay engaged. So I want to thank you for being a great audience, for participating, for having great ideas, for allowing us to bucket with you and think about things from the user's perspective. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of GEW.